Welcome back to 20-Side Adventures. This is part 2 of Mythic from the new War of Immortals from Pathfinder 2nd Edition. If you haven't seen my first video, maybe you should go through that first. Link in the description, where we talk about levels 0 through 12 and the very basics of what Mythic rules are. This video, we're going to dive into the fever dream power trip that is Mythic Destinies, taking you from level 12 to 20. All of these destinies are incredibly thematic about becoming a very specific type of ultra-powerful, in many cases divine or fiendish type being, and what impact that has in the world of the game you are playing in. If you guys like the content we're putting out here on the channel, please give a like and subscribe down below. And with no shilling or further ado, let's get into this video. Okay, the Apocalypse Rider is the first dedication you can take on your Mythic Destiny. This is if you are growing into and becoming one of the Apocalypse Riders, which is essentially a 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse. You actually do not have to have a mount coming into this dedication. It will give you one. However, if you were a mounted class before, that mount will get a little bit extra oomph for having all of those feats previously from your non-Mythic existence. So it is kind of geared around someone maybe wanting to be that fiendish or devilish cavalier as they move on through their Mythic Destiny. At each of your feat levels, you're going to get some choices, just like any other archetype. I'm not going to read through most of them, just if something really jumped out at me that I thought was kind of cool or interesting, we'll kind of bring them up. For the most part, the Apocalypse Rider was so-so for me. You get a lot of stuff that makes being that mounted cavalier-style character from 1st edition very reminiscent, and it kind of leans into having some bonuses to damage and moving through your enemies. Again, nothing in this one really jumped out at me. As is common for all of these at level 20, you'll take a feat that's going to give you some modicum of immortality or resurrection or coming back from the dead. But as you can sort of see here around me, the level 20 Immortal Ruin feat is pretty robust. Your commitment to ending all life earns you a measure of immortality, setting the stage for you to become a true rider of the apocalypse, possibly supplanting one of the 4. So if you are playing in Golarion, this story will set you up on the path to replace one of the 4 horsemen that presently exists. And essentially, all normal ways of killing you don't really happen. You have to go through a whole bunch of extra steps to actually find your death once you've become level 20 and are immortal in your Mythic state. As if it already wasn't hard enough to die in Mythic, it gets even harder. So the Archfiend is next. This is a little bit of alphabetical. So the first 2 are clearly when you are playing in that evil campaign. This one is all around building your fiendish home in the hellscape, creating that domain that you will rule over and attract souls to your bidding, as well as those you will bind through your fiendish pacts and contracts. And you'll find this for most of the archetypes for Mythic, are really paths to building yourself as some of these epic or divine beings within the world. So if you're playing inside Golarion, you're going to be drastically changing the scope of the celestial and demonic realms. If you have a homebrew world, this is a fantastic way to write that story out in kind of a progressive way through your table gaming experience, how to create some of these epic characters from your myths and legends. You will get the Manifest Realm ability, which allows you to bring your realm into the real world and impact things around it. The influence of your realm works very much like Bless or Bane with those aura of its influence. Every round you can spend manifesting and concentrating one action, and it expands the radius that your realm impacts. If you don't spend an action sustaining it, it shrinks. So this class will revolve around how much you can have your realm influence the material world. As you move through this class, you have options to augment your realm, such as Seat of Power. This puts a physical seat of power, think of Khorne and the Skull Throne, in your demonic realm, and then how that can move through to the mortal realm and impact things that you're influencing there. There's also a pretty interesting feat, Imprisoned Foe. Rather than grant your foes the mercy of a swift death, You can consign them to suffer in an extra-dimensional prison with an appearance of your choosing. Spend 1 mythic point to force a creature that you dealt damage to with your last action to attempt a will saving throw against your class or spell DC, whichever is higher. Regardless of the result, the target is temporarily immune to your imprisoned foe for 24 hours. If they critically succeed, nothing happens. If they succeed, they get stunned too. So even on a success, pretty impactful. If they fail, they are warped out of existence and appear in your demonic realm inside of an extra-dimensional prison, where they cannot escape except for things like interplanar teleport. And critical failure is much the same, except they also show up stunned. At 18, you can take Profane Bargain, which is basically a mechanical set for you to offer profane deals to mortals, so you can entrap souls in your demonic realm. And then lastly, at 20, Fiend Eternal, a way to become immortal. Ascend to Celestial. This is exactly the same as the Fiend, but for the good side of the spectrum, you can choose to manifest as any variety of good-aligned celestial beings. The Ascended Celestial revolves around a nimbus of holy light that you can turn on or off and emits an aura, and how that aura affects your allies around it, and how your power flows through that aura. This can be things from absorbing damage from your allies, giving them saving throw bonuses, increasing their damage output, things of that nature. At 20, you get this archetype's version of immortality, which is if you perish, you are reborn as a Nephilim, and you move through that life, eventually regaining your divine spark and rising again as a celestial being, as was your ancestor. Next up is the Beast Lord. This is wrapping your mythicness into that of a spirit of a great beast, where you and the beast slowly, your souls almost become one over time. This one had actually some of my favorite feats, and we'll kind of dive into those a little closer. The animal companions in 2E and minions in general have been really toned down, so this kind of felt like a nod to how animal companions kind of felt in first edition. It's a shame it has to be at that mythic tier to kind of get that back, but I did like a lot of their feats. One that was really curious to me is Chosen Ward, where basically you just pick a member of your party and you and your animal companion are like, yeah, that guy's with us, and you get some benefits to protecting them. I thought that was kind of interesting. The first that I really liked is at 14. It's We Are One. You and your companion move as one, never tripping each other up. This fluid movement throws your enemies off balance. You and your united companion can share each other's spaces. When you do so, both you and your united companion provide lesser cover to one another, and you and your companion also count as being adjacent to one another when sharing each other's spaces. A target is automatically off guard against the first strike each round from each of you while you are sharing the same space. So you get to maximize the space you're in, you're providing cover to each other, and you're giving each other flanking when you aren't necessarily in a flanking position. So lots of really great synergy there. And then when that gets combined with Unified Stance, one action, you enter the stance, you give Quickened to your ally companion, and they get basically this extra action to stride or strike when you command them. You're getting that kind of action economy penalty back to where you almost have fully functioning animal companion and your main character. The next one that I just really loved is called Bat Around. Your attack moves a foe into a position that your united companion can take full advantage of. Make a melee strike against an enemy. As long as your strike deals damage, you can attempt an athletics check to either reposition or shove the creature you hit. Both attacks count towards your multiple attack penalty, but it doesn't increase until you've made both attacks. So you're going to get the attack and the shove at your full attack value. And then if your reposition and shove moves the target and it ends in the movement within your companion's reach, your companion can strike the target. Unless it critically fails, your companion can also attempt an athletics check to reposition or shove. These attacks affect the companion's multiple attack penalty the same way. So you get to hit them, shove them, your creature gets to hit them, could shove them back, or somewhere else, and just move them around the field, and just the image of that happening back and forth is very amusing to me. Pack of the Beast Lord was kind of amusing. You psychically project copies of your companion, so they basically become a swarm, and they're gargantuan in size. So I thought that was kind of funny. And then your immortal ability is 1 life, 2 vessels. You and your animal companion's souls become linked. If you die, you take over your animal companion for a few days until you reconstitute. If you both die, you are both reincarnated nearby and grow up as normal, your 2 spirits drawn together, and when you finally reunite, you regain your former glory. All right, next up, the Broken Chain. This is kind of like Anarchist Antifa Fever Dream of a class. Basically, you are this embodiment of freedom and liberation, and you get this really unique ability called Ultimatum of Liberation, and it has some very specific notes from the GM up here that it can only be used against someone who is an oppressor, so you have to like negotiate and discern what quantifies an oppressor at your table to be able to use this Ultimatum of Liberation. They give you some baselines that if the strong are using their power against the weak is a kind of a baseline of how you use this power. You basically shout for all to hear this ultimatum against these oppressors, and all creatures who hear the ultimatum, including yourself, or learn about it later on, are emboldened by your words for 1 day and gain a +2 status bonus to their will saving throws. This increases to +3 if they're within 30 feet of you. Additionally, the first time each day that the creature and each of its allies comes within 30 feet of you, they must succeed a will save against your DC or become frightened 1/2 on a critical failure. The second effect has the emotion, fear, and mental traits. The oppressing creature may end all the effects as a free action by truthfully agreeing to permanently end their oppression. Otherwise, your Ultimatum of Liberation has no duration, though you can only have one ultimatum active at a time. So basically, you get to impose this penalty for shouting at someone that's going to last until they give up and agree with you, or you kill them, I guess. Block tactics. You experience the undertaking of direct action and know how to protect the identity and health of you and your allies when doing so. During your daily preparation, you can select a number of targets equal to half your level. The disguise of the targets to hide their identities, which gives them a +4 status bonus to deception checks. See, the Antifa wet dream right there. The remainder of the class really revolves around powerful speeches and using your influence to affect change and the mentality of others. Bring into the fold is an interesting one. Basically, you have the option to turn someone who's the subject of your ultimatum and attempt to turn them to your side so you can make bad guys into good guys. Then we also have the Spirit of 1776 here with Liberty or Death. You have given a despot enough time to think, and now is the time for them to forfeit their control or die. Spend a mythic point and make a strike with a mythic proficiency against the required creature. If you succeed and deal damage, the target must succeed a fortitude save against your class DC or die. So basically once a day, if they're the target of your ultimate liberation, you have a Vorpal weapon against despots. And lastly, you can't kill an idea, which is kind of the most antithetical thing I have seen for what this class is, being all about freedom. But those who would destroy you instead transform you into a powerful yet formless entity. If you would be killed while you have an ultimate liberation active, you, along with your equipment, become an idea form. So you do have to have your ultimatum up. As an idea form, you are invisible and incorporeal. You have only 1 hit point and can't gain more, but you are immune to all damage. If your dying or doomed condition would increase to a high enough level to kill you, it does not increase, and you're immune to any effect that would instantly kill or destroy you. You are immune to the unconscious condition, yet can take only purely mental actions. You can communicate telepathically with your allies at an unlimited range and gain 2 extra reactions at the start of each of your turns. Additionally, you can aid allies through nothing but telepathic advice, without having to spend an action to prepare first, and can spend a mythic point to do so at mythic proficiency. So, still quite a lot of stuff you can do in this weird, nebulous idea that is existing in the masses. Now, the part I was talking about. Before an hour passes, while being an idea form, you must choose a willing follower of your cause to fuse with and cease to be an idea form. Use your level, their ancestry, heritage, and ancestry feats, and work with your GM to choose which combination of class, attributes, modifiers, skills, feats would make a good representation of this fusion. This new character has all of your previous equipment. If you do not fuse with a follower after an hour of being an idea form, you cease to be in the idea form and die. So you have to take your thoughts and ideas and take over another person, and you become them. They become you. They cease to exist because your idea has wiped out everything about them other than, their ancestry and their heritage, and everything else becomes a weird amalgamation.
You are communist!
Da! Why do you think I wear red, comrade?
So, as the ultimate champion of freedom, to avoid your own death, your ideas are so powerful that you just take over someone else's soul. It's kind of weird to me. The Eternal Legend, this is basically if you want to play Dragon Ball Z and be a Super Saiyan. You get a whole bunch of feats around martial arts, striking, fighting, moving quickly, leaping, all these incredible physical feats. This is very much the smash and throw around and wrestle Mythic Destiny. The Godling. Now this is when you are ready to become a full-fledged deity. The interesting thing about this one is when you gain this dedication, you get a Hierophant. So basically, someone in your party, an NPC, another player, a PC, like it doesn't really explain how you get this Hierophant, but you get a pope. This person is the head of your faith, proselytizes of your greatness, and is all about building up the future religion to your godly to be nature. Now, that just sounds fluffy out the gate, but there are feats along the way that empower this Hierophant. So you are getting these abilities to build your character at the same time empowering this other character that really isn't greatly defined in your group or across the world somewhere maybe. For example, within Absolve Sins, your forgiveness is without limit, though the path of penitence can be painful, especially against those who have trespassed against your current mortal form. Spend a mythic point. Each enemy within 30-foot emanation takes 14d6 damage. Will save against your class DC or spell DC. As you force them to reflect upon their sins and misdeeds, any creature who dealt damage to you or your Hierophant since the end of your previous turn uses the outcome 1 degree success worse than the result of their saving throw. So you're doing this 30-foot burst, a big amount of damage, and if they've hit you or your Hierophant, they're probably getting a fail, if not a crit fail on that. The other interesting thing I forgot to mention is you pick a domain, and that becomes what you are going to become a deity over. And as you move through these feat trees, you're getting options to select things that are basically building your divine profile. Other domains you're taking, what your favorite weapon is, what your favorite skill is, what your divine attributes are. All of these feats give you choices to select those things and build out a full divine profile for a god in Pathfinder's rule system. Another example of what I was talking about is this sanctified relic. You take a magic item, and you just get to make it an Apex item, but the only person who can benefit from the Apex item is your Hierophant. So this connection to the Hierophant in playing a Godling is very important, and something that you will need to discuss if you are going to be playing this with your GM. And if you're a GM who wants to have a Godling, or a couple, or a whole party of them, you have to figure out this Hierophant thing, I think, well before it happens, because you have to have an idea of what you're going to be doing about. Level 20, obviously, you become a full god. That is the immortal path on this one. Pretty straightforward. The Prophesied Monarch is next. This is you are King Arthur. This would be a really weird one, in my opinion, to play unless you were doing a kingdom builder or something very similar to it. This is another weird one. If you're playing it at a table where everyone's mythic, some of these really give me the impression that maybe only one character is supposed to be fully mythic at the table. I don't know how this interacts with very diverging mythic destinies. So if that's something you have experienced or you're playing through right now or you have an idea of, I'd love to hear about that in the comments. But basically, once you become the monarch, you choose knights that follow you. So you assemble the round table, and your feats and things that you do will impact your knights, give them more reactions, give them abilities, empower them, increase their armor, their weapons, wide variety of things of that nature. Also for the kingdom building one, decree prosperity. So if you spend a mythic point on this, and you can do it once per day, you make this decree that all around will be prosperous, and in a 10-mile radius, each individual, so everyone in this 10 miles, gets a +2 status bonus to earn income. That has some weird, crazy world effects in a kingdom builder game where you have a populace doing stuff. Pretty wild, but I could see how it would be entertaining. One that struck me as really odd on this is Fated Duel. So this is one where I start to kind of question what the design concept was, and this is my almost, is it like a high-power fever dream versus really solid game design? And I'll explain. You and your knights are an unbeatable force together, but sometimes it's a monarch's duty to resolve the fate of their kingdom with nothing more than their own trusted weapon. Spend a mythic point and choose an opponent within 30 feet. You declare a fated duel against that opponent. If the opponent accepts your challenge, you're locked in mystical combat together. Neither you nor your opponent can move more than 30 feet from each other. You both can't be harmed by any other creature, than each other, and you both can't harm any creature other than each other. So you can't impact anything else happening on the map now, and nothing else can impact you. This mystical bond is incredibly draining on both parties, pulling at their life and spirit. If neither you nor your opponent has defeated the other in 1 minute's time, so 10 rounds, you both become doomed 1. Your doomed condition increases by 1 for each additional minute that passes until both of you die. So think about this. You have locked the whole rest of your table out of interacting with that bad guy, and from you interacting with anything but that bad guy. So if this is a solo fight against the big bad evil guy, no one else gets to play now. If it is kind of a diverse table, but you took on maybe the biggest one to give your knights a chance to clean up the board, well, you're still locked in this solo fight while everyone else cleans up the mooks, and now they just get to sit and watch you roll dice against the GM. And if it goes for longer than a minute, good lord, 10 rounds of combat is a lot. It goes to doomed 1, and they foresee that if this just keeps getting stalled out, you could just kill yourselves in it because you don't finish it in time. That is going to be a terribly boring session for everyone else at the table except for the hero locked in the fated duel. So that's just weird to me, and there's a lot of Mythic things that are kind of really self-centered like that, and I'm not sure I'm a big fan of. The immortality feat here, the once in future, a clear call out to King Arthur. As long as you are still known within the realm, you become reborn and regrow into your divine nature. The Wildspell is probably the least mythic sounding of any of these when you read through it, but it's just someone who has gained incredible arcane powers. It all revolves around a focus spell you get called a Spell Surge, where you create a radius of intense magical energy that has a couple different ways it can interact, and you choose that when you cast it, and then a lot of these feats interact with that. So for example, Extended Surge at 14 is just going to boost the range of that aura from 30 feet to 60. Pull Mythic Heightening once per day. You can spend a Mythic point, take a level 1 spell, cast it in your highest heightened abilities, and do an excessive amount of damage at that point. Spell Network is pretty cool. Anyone in your Spell Surge that casts magic, so it's not just you, it's any other magic casters can use anyone else inside the Surge as their point of origin for a spell. Imbue Spell is perhaps one of my favorites. You pass the energy of your magic onto an ally, allowing another to release the spell. Upon completing the casting of a spell, instead of a normal effect of the spell, you imbue the energy of that spell to an ally that's adjacent to you or within your Spell Surge. You expend the spell slot, or focus point as normal. At any time during the next hour, that ally can release the energy of a spell with a single action that has the Concentrate and Manipulate trait. They don't need to expend any spell slots or focus points. All attributes of the spell are determined based on your original casting of the spell, including any spell shape feats used, but the ally is treated as the spellcaster for determining the origin of the spell and making any choices the spell requires. If the spell must be sustained, your ally takes the action to sustain it. You can't target yourself with this ability. If the spell isn't released by the ally within an hour, the energy dissipates. You can only have one spell imbue at a time. Additionally, additional uses of this ability cause previously imbued spells to dissipate immediately. So hey, it's dangerous to go alone. Take this fireball with you. And then that person in the next hour can just throw a fireball when they need it. Mystic Life Force is the level 20 immortality for the Spell Surge, where you basically become mana and magic itself, slowly reconstituting yourself when the time comes. It also requires this ritual. If you are destroyed and you become magic, you can dump 2,000 gold worth of magic items into this ritual center and try to reconstitute your Spell Surge. So one thing I was talking about was the near immortality level of Mythic, even before you get to level 20. And I was really hoping to find in the Mythic monsters and different ways these encounters were set up that perhaps the Doom condition was weaved in there a little bit more so you could stack Doom a little quicker to give players that feeling of danger. And it's not there. So I'm fully in the mindset that Mythic is all about power trips and minimal risk. If you don't want your party to die, Mythic is probably where you're going to want to play and spend some time. Overall, I like a lot of the feat concepts. I think it was better executed than it was in first edition, but I'm not a fan, and I don't see myself running a Mythic game at my table. If something comes up in my homebrew world where I need to add some gods or go somewhere to that extreme, I might dip into this, but I would feel much more comfortable as a GM plucking some of these Mythic feats and abilities out and rewarding them through special items or special powers outside the normal power structure in a normal game, and use this content in that regard instead of playing a truly Mythic campaign. One of my players asked me when we were talking about this in our Discord was, what would have made me want to play a Mythic game? And that was a really hard question to answer because I don't think it's badly designed. I think there's good stuff here, but it almost tries too hard for me. This is how you be a god. This is how you be these really epic things. And I'm not interested in telling that story very often. So this subsystem just doesn't appeal to me on a general gaming level. I also think they could have made it less me focused on a lot of these, because I don't understand how you are a godling or the monarch with having knights and hierophants and having to hand out these titles and things to other people at a table, unless you're all playing the game where, yeah, hey, Bob's going to become a god this game and we're going to be his church flunkies. Like, if that's the story you want to tell in the game you want to play, this could fit in great. But everyone becoming a Mythic Destiny, I don't see how to play that as a GM. Like, that's really difficult for me, how to balance all of those interactions, that story, weave it through, and make something satisfying. And maybe that's just a limitation on me, but I don't know, I'm not feeling Mythic. And honestly, I never ran a truly Mythic game in Pathfinder 1st Edition. I got to play in one, and it was all right. I didn't care for it. We could have done it in any other number of ways, and I think it might have made a little more sense and been a little more fun. I do think playing through that game in my head in 2nd Edition, it definitely would work better, and the Mythic would have made a lot more sense than it did in 1st Edition. So from that standpoint, I think they did a good job in building it with what it was, but it really just doesn't appeal to me personally and the way I like to play Pathfinder. Definitely, though, there are some great artifacts, cool equipment, some cool feat ideas, and definitely worth having Mythic things in your toolbox to reward your players with as something unique and outside of the box in a normal game. And I think that's a great use of Mythic, and where I'll probably spend most of my time with it. All right, this is part 2 of Mythic and concludes my review of Mythic in War of Immortals. I will be reviewing the other classes and a few other things from this book. I'm pretty late to the game, but such is the nature of a small YouTuber that has a normal job. In any case, I hope you guys have a wonderful time on your 20-side adventures, and we'll see you next time.